Scott, let's start with what's happening in America. I never thought I'd see the day. Not when the cops were laying into young people protesting, because I'm so old I saw them killing students at Kent State University in 1970, 54 years ago. I saw how they treated the young demonstrators at the Democratic Party convention in Chicago in 1968. So I'm getting on. I'm not amazed at what the cops are doing to the young protesters protesting this war. I'm totally amazed that all the people that would have been protesting against the Vietnam War are now cheering on the bludgeoning to the ground of those protesting this one in Gaza. How do you feel about it?
George, when you first met me back in before the invasion of Iraq, I think you recognized that I was somewhat uncomfortable with the concept of public demonstrations. I was a military man. I was somebody who had been on the other side of the issue. I was offended by what the government was doing, but I was uncomfortable with protests and uncomfortable with participating in protests. But you and others convinced me that that's what needed to be done to get the message out. So I walked with you proudly in London, and I walked with others proudly. You have been consistent in your passion and in the methods of expressing your passion to include protest. I was surrounded in the United States by people of the Vietnam era, and they spoke of the necessity of reviving the spirit of the Vietnam protests. And they went into the streets and they protested and they screamed and they did what they did, and then they disappeared. Because they were very much the weakened warriors. They were the summer soldiers. They didn't have what it took to stick out the fight. Some people did, but by and large, these passionate protesters succumbed to the reality of time, the reality that for a protest to succeed, it needs to be sustainable. But they claim to be morally based. And I've watched them over the years attempt to revive the passion of protest. And they've been unable to do so because at the end of the day, they lack the passion. What we're finding out is they lack the conviction that they are simply empty suits, or should we say empty tie-dye t-shirts. These are not real protesters anymore. These are the fake of the fake. The students today have picked up the baton. They are running with this issue. They are doing that which you and I were demanding of others back in the day, back when we were trying to stop the Iraq War. They are on their own volition stepping up to the battle line. They are doing battle and they are paying the price. These aren't weekend warriors. These aren't summer soldiers. These are committed protesters for a cause that they deeply believe in. And at this time, at this moment in history, this is where those Vietnam War era protesters, those failed protesters of the Iraqi war, need to rise up and rally, because this is a just cause. This is a cause worthy of their sentiment, of their passions, of their sweat, and even of their blood. And yet they are silent. Not just silent, George, you are right. They are on the other side. These are traitors. These are treasonous beings. These are people who mean nothing. And I will say this right now to the anti-war movement in America today: go to hell. You have lost me forever, because you are not the anti-war movement. There is a genocide taking place in Gaza today. There is a horrific conflict that is costing tens of thousands of innocent Palestinians their lives, and you are silent. Not just silent, but you are on the side of the police, the thuggish, brutish police who are coming in and enforcing the constitutionally questionable edicts and orders of the governors and the mayors and the school administrators. Freedom of speech means nothing in America today. Freedom of assembly means nothing. Yes, these students might be trespassing. So what? What do we want of our students? Wherever you are in the world, you want people who have open minds and open hearts. They are going to university to learn to become good citizens, citizens who empower themselves with knowledge and information, but not just book learning, but to actually get out and be amongst the people, to learn the reality of life. And here they are confronted with one of the greatest evils in modern history, the genocide taking place in Gaza, and they have said no, they will not remain silent, and they have done what we demand of good citizenship. They have stood up to be accounted, to hold people accountable, And the rest of society is backing away, especially those hypocrites who claim to be anti-war. There is no anti-war movement in America today. I mean, the anti-war movement is out there with the students. The students are there. The students have taken up this cause. But those who claim to be anti-war, those who disappointed me in the lead up to the Iraq War and disappointed me ever since, have proven that my disappointment was not, falsely thrown out there. They are a disappointment. They are hypocrites. They are the worst of society because they claim to be one thing, but they have been exposed as another. I am sickened by the fact that the anti-war movement in America today is silent, not just silent, but sitting on their butts cheering on the police that they once claimed to want to confront themselves. Liars, hypocrites, the scum of the earth.
Is Netanyahu going to invade Rafah in your view, Scott?
Yes, because nobody's going to stop him. There's no force out there right now that Netanyahu is afraid of. He's not afraid of Joe Biden. He's not afraid of the United States. He should be, but he's not. He's not afraid of the International Criminal Court. He's not afraid of the International Court of Justice. He's not afraid of the United Nations. He's not afraid of anything. So he is going to invade Rafah. He is going to commit a horrific crime. And the sad thing is, Egypt, which claimed this would be a red line worthy of war, will do nothing. Jordan, which claimed this is a red line worthy of war, will do nothing. I believe the world will be silent in the face of this because at the end of the day, our governments lack the courage of conviction that those students have at Columbia University, University of Texas, UCLA, and other campuses, Emory College across this nation.
The Israelis are paying a price on the ground in Gaza. They hide the true extent of their casualties, but Israel is an open society amongst the Jewish people there. They have freedoms that many in Arab countries don't have, and they are not able to conceal forever the damage that this is doing to their own young people. A number of the paratroopers who were supposed to turn up for duty in Rafah absconded. A number of soldiers are now refusing, and many soldiers have been killed and wounded. What sort of opposition might they face in the tents, amongst the tents, and amongst the now broken slums of Rafah?
Well, Hamas, as a military organization, has not been defeated. They've been bloodied. Let there be no doubt. There have been casualties on both sides, and Hamas has suffered casualties as well. But it is not a broken organization. We saw how quickly, once the Israelis withdrew from the north of Gaza and the center of Gaza, how quickly the Hamas fighters reasserted themselves in that area. And the ferocity and tenacity of the Hamas fighters, the proof of that is, of course, where some of Israel's most hardened infantry soldiers, the paratroopers, and from other elite brigades, Golani Brigade, are saying, we don't want to go back in there. This is not a fight we want to engage in. This will be a bloody fight. This will be a very bloody fight. But Israel has a new kind of stormtrooper that many in the West are unaware of. They have these reserve battalions of yeshiva students, Talmudic studies students, who are Orthodox, fanatically so. And for 5 years, they get to study in a Talmudic university while serving in a reserve battalion. These fanatics, these Jewish fanatics, are the ones who are implementing the Amalek instructions of Netanyahu. These are the people that you see with their arms around each other chanting that they will eradicate the seed of Amalek. These are the people who are desperately wanting to get into this fight because they despise the Palestinians. Despise is not the right word, because to despise something, you at least have to recognize the humanity of them. They don't recognize the Palestinian people as humans. They call them human animals, and they are going in there and they have no qualms about killing children, about killing women, about killing innocents. These are the people that executed the people. These are the worst of the worst. These are the Israeli equivalents of the Eisenstadt group, the SS executioners of Nazi Germany. And there are unfortunately sufficient battalions of this nature that Israel will be able to amass the military force necessary to move against Rafah. And these people will go against Rafah with no human compunction to show mercy. They will be merciless in the execution of the orders that they will be given.
So we're about to watch the biggest single bloodbath since the Second World War.
George, imagine, if you would, the Warsaw Ghetto. the infamous Warsaw Ghetto. Everybody's heard about the Nazi eradication of the Warsaw Ghetto. We're about to watch the modern day manifestation of the Nazi eradication of the Warsaw Ghetto live on TV with the entire world knowing it's happening, watching it, the buildup, and then, like it's some sort of perverse pay for TV entertainment center, to watch it unfold and do nothing to stop it. Um, I mean, you have the United States now, who once said you can't do this, talking about bringing in Gazans to the United States as a way of opening the door for the expulsion of the Gazan civilian population from Gaza, which has always been the Israeli objective from day one, to remove the Palestinians from Gaza. The United States is now taking a leading role in doing this. This is horrible. What's happening? It's a nightmare. And yet somehow the world has become so um, immune to the suffering of the Palestinians. I don't understand it, George. I don't know why the world doesn't view the Palestinian people as human beings that deserve the dignity, that deserve everything that we demand of ourselves. They deserve. And yet we're going to watch the eradication of Rafah and a military campaign every bit as brutal as the Nazi liquidation of the Warsaw Ghetto.
Well, most of the world can see it, of course. It's your country and mine and a few others. We constitute some 14% of the world's population. Most of the rest of the world can see it all too clearly. I said in my monologue that really the West at this point is morally and politically bankrupt. Do you share that view?
Absolutely. I mean, bankruptcy, you're actually insulting people that go through bankruptcy by saying that the West is bankrupt. The concept of bankruptcy implies at one point in time that we were solvent. There is no solvency here. There is no recovery. We're worse than bankrupt. We are decrepit. We are rotten. We are falling apart at the seams. We are the exact opposite of what we claim to be, which makes it even worse. I respect people more. I respect evil people who admit that they're evil. I say, at least you're honest about who you are. Here in the United States and in Europe and in the United Kingdom, we claim to be something that we're not. And in the most Orwellian fashion, we use doublespeak and double action. We say something, but we're going to do the exact opposite. This is beyond bankruptcy. This is literally the total manifestation of evil. We have become that which must be eradicated. And I say this as a proud American who believes in what America should be, but not what America has become. And at this point in time, if America can't heal itself, and it looks like the American people more and more are incapable of that kind of self-cure, maybe it's time for the world to say America's not welcome amongst the civilized nations anymore. And I would say that the same holds true for the United Kingdom.
Yeah, alas, alas. We may be two countries divided by a common language, as Oscar Wilde said, but we are absolutely on the same page when it comes to these crimes that we are discussing. Just lastly, and I'm deeply grateful for your time, will the invasion of Rafah make more or less likely the long-awaited warrant for the arrest of Netanyahu? And if it is issued, what difference will it make, Scott?
You know, one of the interesting things about this warrant is that the ICC has never talked about it. This is a figment of Netanyahu's imagination. He held an emergency session of his National Security Council where he raised this possibility, and then they leaked it to the Israeli press, and then they brought it to the United States. I'm thinking more and more that this is a political ploy by Netanyahu to heal the divisions that existed, because prior to the talk of the ICC, the Biden administration was talking about cutting off arms sales and otherwise opposing. There was a split. People were talking about the divide between Biden and Netanyahu. Today, you have the White House coming out in defense of Israel's genocidal policies. You have the United States Congress, the Speaker of the House, again, passing resolutions that seem to be defending Israel's genocidal behavior. This was a brilliant political move by Benjamin Netanyahu to throw something out there that the United States he played us like a fine-tuned fiddle because we have problems with the ICC in terms of its jurisdiction over, potential jurisdiction over American soldiers, et cetera. And we're vehemently against it. And so what he's done is he's taken any potential indictment of him and his defense minister and chief of staff and potentially other Israeli soldiers and said to the Americans, what if this was you? And the United States said, well, it can't be us. Therefore, we must step up to defend you. And suddenly Israel and the United States are joined at the hip. The United States is defending Israel's genocidal behavior. This is a disgustingly successful political ploy by Benjamin Netanyahu. I don't think there's a warrant under consideration at the ICC. And if there was, given the reaction of the United States, I don't think the ICC has the courage to issue that warrant now.
Scott Ritter, as always, deeply grateful, and thank you for your wisdom.